And we're live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the World of Gray podcast. In a society divided by black and white arguments, we are here to help you explore the world of gray. Nice. You got better time in Chisholm. I am Kelowna's Cougar Meat Kid, Colin Cutler.
I am Handsome Pete, looking handsome as ever.
Handsome Pete has joined us. He is the producer here on the World of Gray. Mike Chisholm has had a family emergency. He is joining us and watching this podcast. Out of respect, we are not going to talk about why he is not here. No, I would not replace you ever. We send all our love and support out to Chisholm and his family at this time. So all the best to you, and we love you. And he's a little mad that Pete is co-hosting.
Oh, shut up, Pete.
This is a travesty, he says. So today we're talking about the Trump impeachment. This podcast is obviously it's opinion, and the main reason why I started this is to join everyone in the journey of critical thinking and filtering out really bad information. A big part of this podcast, though, is also me learning as we go. And this is one of those things that is kind of hard for me to follow along with, is the impeachment process. So I'm here just to shed a little bit of light and help everyone with a little bit of this confusion, because if I'm confused, I guarantee there's other people that are confused out there as well. So I will do the research for you, because I know that it is difficult to filter out some of this information and find good sources, and we're all busy and we don't really have time to do all that. So I have kind of obsessively been watching American politics, even though I'm Canadian, which is kind of ironic. Pete, have you been following any of the impeachment?
I really honestly haven't. I'm so busy as well that I don't have a whole lot of back time to look at this stuff. So I literally was doing my research last night.
So you're going to learn a little bit today as well?
Yes, 100%.
All right. That's what we're doing. So my dad has never watched this podcast, not the most tech savvy person. So we're going to see if he can get on here. And if not, I'm going to call him live and we're going to help him figure this out. I just shared it to my Colin Cutler page, so hopefully he can figure that out. Leanna Campbell has joined us. Hello, Leanna. How are you? Hashtag crazy neighbors. That's funny. Okay. So before we get into the impeachment itself, there is one thing I really want to bring up that has happened over the holidays that has kind of been the tipping point for me with Fox News. And I have not been shy in criticizing Fox News. Have you seen the movie Vice about Dick Cheney?
Yes.
Okay. So they talk about the guy who founded Fox News. And when he founded Fox News, he was trying to basically make it a propaganda wing for the Conservative Party or the Republican Party in the United States, to a point where even Cheney was like, that's never going to work, and blah, 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 right? They talk about that a little bit in Vice. Fox News has done some, not just, I was going to say ridiculous, but there's a whole other word for this, like beyond propaganda, which it's crazy in America, which is supposed to be like the freest, most democratic country in the world, that they allow things like this to even come into existence. And in that Vice movie, they talk about how there used to be a law when it came to journalism where you had to show both sides equally as to avoid propaganda because of the Soviet Union, right?
Yep.
Which then got lobbied and got removed as a law. So you don't have to show both sides, hence places like Fox News. I'm not saying CNN's any better. They do the same thing when it comes to left news and like hiding things like regime change wars and even just suppressing information like the war in Yemen and things like that. So I've definitely been critical of Fox News in the past, but I don't know if anyone's seen this, and you and me talked about this before we went live.
Yeah.
Fox News has done a series of videos about Trump being cut out of the Home Alone 2 movie on CBS.
I think it was CBS.
In Canada. And this is a movie that has, in this form, with this exact edit, it was edited and aired in 2014, before Trump was ever president, before Trudeau was prime minister.
Yeah.
So then Trump was out tweeting that, Trudeau must not like my like me being hard on his trade policies and blah, 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 and saying that Trudeau is the reason why this was edited in 2014 before he was prime minister, I guess, in assuming that he's going to become prime minister at the same time, a year later, Trump's going to become president, and then he can use it against, it hurts my brain. So all that being said, Brian Tyler Cohen has a YouTube channel where he goes through a lot of these videos, right? A lot of Trump stuff, but a lot of other news videos. And he goes through this this Fox News montage and breaks it down very eloquently. He's a very smart man, and he articulates himself much better than I do. He clearly writes a script before he does these videos, which I definitely don't do.
That's why we like it so raw.
Yeah, we like to just go in raw. You know what I'm saying? Fox News, though, they have a whole montage of these anchors just losing their mind about this, saying it's disgusting. Donald Trump Jr. has this whole rant about how this is a ploy from the left and how they're all triggered, and which is hilarious because he's literally being a snowflake and acting triggered while calling people snowflakes and saying that they're triggered, which is...
He really doesn't know his ass from his hole in the ground, and that's just how it is.
Right? He has a whole book called... Whoa, Chisholm just messaged way too many things that I cannot follow. Is my dad on here now? Oh, he made it. All right, there he goes. And he heard
Mike
that...
saying something we talk...
My dad has joined us. He said, yes, he's not tech savvy, but he's here. So Fox News it's a whole montage. Now, in this montage, there is one segment on Fox News where it's like they do those split screens where there's like 6 anchors and they're all discussing.
Yes. Yeah.
Usually via satellite or whatever in different studios. And one of the girls says, okay, but this was edited in 2014. So why are we even talking about this? And then she just gets berated by the other 5 people. And I was saying to Pete, it's like being in a room with 5 crazy people who are all calling you crazy, and then you have to defend why you're not crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's just insanity. And then one of the guys, as his argument, says, oh, well, he wasn't president then, but he's popular and he's president now, so they should have put it back in. Saying that they should put in this 7-second clip of Trump pointing to where the lobby is in a Trump hotel.
Why?
And the other thing people got to realize is these things are edited for time, for advertisement. And, so you can fact check this. I think it's CBC, actually. Yeah, CBC. And the spokesperson for CBC, which he shouldn't even have to, he put out a statement explaining just that this was edited in 2014 for advertisement. So for me,
CBC for sure.
So for me, this is the tipping point of me throwing my hands up with Fox News. And I've not defended Fox News, but defended the civil discourse of people, shitting on one side or shitting on the other side, and whatever. But this is bad, and this is borderline dictatorship, right? And I was talking to my dad earlier, and honestly, my dad would have been a great co-host for this because he's been following this impeachment inquiry quite religiously. But I was saying this is very much along the same lines as Kim Jong-un, where Trump's like on this pedestal to such an unrealistic level. Because remember, Kim Jong-un was telling his people that he doesn't poop. That was like the propaganda.
Yep.
Like he never defecates, which to me was amazing.
We love you too, Mike.
We love you, Mike. Okay. So we're going to get into this impeachment. I know this is quite confusing. So impeachment has to start with an inquiry. So Nancy Pelosi put forth this inquiry to get to a House vote. And then after the House vote, if it goes through, which the Democrats have the majority, it would go to a Senate trial. So the inquiry goes through, and there were some issues with the inquiry with Trump saying that, Kevin Jeffries has joined us. Trump was saying that he wasn't getting his due process. My dad actually explained this to me a little better than I had understood with my reading. But Trump was saying there was no due process in the inquiry, even though he was subpoenaed to come. He was subpoenaed to testify or have other people testify and to bring some documents, which they blocked, which is one of the articles that ended up going to the House. But then my dad was saying that he wanted his own witnesses, like he wanted Biden to testify about his own impeachment, which makes no sense, right? Like what?
Makes zero sense.
Like what are you even gonna? It's not about Biden's corruption. It's about you holding aid, right? Which we'll get into. So the people he wanted to subpoena made no sense to the actual case being put forward. So now Trump is trying to say that he's not going to participate in this process because there was no due process, but him participating in the process is due process. So he's saying that he's not getting due process. So that's why he's not going to utilize his due process. So this is the Orwellian world we live in where like none of this shit makes any sense. So the inquiry goes through. It goes to the House for a vote. And what they were voting on was 2 articles on impeachment. And we're going to talk about the validity of these articles of impeachment as well. So Article 1 was abuse of power. And oh, by the way, Pete's here to fact check any bullshit that comes out of my mouth. So be quick.
Charlie feels left out here.
Oh,
because Charlie's our fact checker.
Oh, yeah. Well, we had a little competition going at one point to see who was a faster fact checker, Charlie or Pete. But I think Charlie won a couple times on that.
Actually, no, he won all the time. To be honest,
he was quick on the draw. So hey, Charlie, if you want to fact check as well, we would love that. So the first article is abuse of power. This was Trump withholding aid to the Ukrainian government, military aid for the Ukrainian government, for them to investigate Biden's corruption. The corruption was Biden's son was on some energy board, and he was making like $30,000 a month. Is that right? 30,000.
Yep.
$30,000 a month. Which, hey, I am not a corporate Democrat supporter in the least. If anything, if you got to throw a label on me, I'm a progressive supporter, right? So, hey, I have questions about that too. Why is this guy that has no experience in energy in that field on the board making $30,000 a year when his dad is vice president? We can debate that. We can talk about that. But whether or not there's actual corruption there has never been proved. There's no evidence to that. And as it stands right now, that is not something that should require military aid being held up, right? So we're talking about what is an impeachable offense. So withholding military aid for a government to look into corruption of a political opponent, that is, in my opinion, for as little that I know, definitely an impeachable offense. I mean, really, when you think about it, withholding money is kind of like blackmail, right? Or like a bribe or whatever, right? Like, here, if you want this, you have to do this. Trump has said that the Ukrainian president says he wasn't pressured and blah, blah, blah. But whether he's pressured or not does not excuse the abuse of power. Okay. We're going to get into my predictions later at the end of the podcast. Do I think this impeachment is going to do anything? We'll talk about that. That all being said, whether you believe this impeachment is going to remove Trump out of office or has really any validity to it is besides the point. The point is, in a democratic country, there needs to be checks and balances. And according to following the Constitution that the United States follows, if a president is abusing power, they need to be held accountable. If they're not, there's a dictatorship, right?
Exactly.
In my opinion. So I don't blame the Democrats for going along with this impeachment. Do I think that these are the right articles? Well, we're going to get into that as well. But I do support following checks and balances. I also think that President Obama and the Bush-Cheney administration also should have been held accountable for several things as well. There's a lot of the states went from 2 wars to 7 under Obama. Obama deported a ton of people. So I'm not saying that those are impeachable offenses by any means, but I am very critical of all presidents, and it doesn't matter what party you fall under. But this is 2019, and this is our present reality, and this is what we're talking about. The second article has a little bit more debate. And by the way, I'd just like to take a little break here. Deanna has joined us. Aaron has joined us. Please join in. We're talking about Trump's impeachment. If you have any opinion on this, I would love to hear it. So the second article that went to House for a vote was obstruction of Congress. So this one confused me a little bit. My dad actually helped clear some of this stuff up, and I had to look at it. I wasn't sure what the obstruction of Congress was. This actually had to do with the impeachment inquiry. And there are some political analysts that I really enjoy, some alternative progressive political analysts I really enjoy, like Kyle Kalinske of Secular Talk. If you haven't checked him out, along with that Brian Tyler Cohen, definitely go check those two out. They're I mean, they definitely have their own bias. We all have our own bias, but they're very articulate guys, and they really lay these facts out. So some of these political analysts have argued that this isn't necessarily an impeachable offense because it's an inquiry, and he's not required by law to participate in the inquiry. If he's subpoenaed for the Senate trial, then that's a different scenario. But the Republicans control the Senate, right? So this was him refusing to comply with subpoenas for testimonies and documents for his entire administration, right? He instructed his entire administration to block any forward progression into this inquiry, right? So whether or not that is an impeachable offense is up for debate. And any opinions with that, Pete?
Not really. Just reading up on it, just basically saying in modern times, contempt of Congress has generally applied to refusal or comply with a subpoena, just like you were saying just now, and that he was doing that.
Yeah, but is that, say, at what part of the process, right? Because I guess the argument is he's not obstructing because it was an inquiry, right? So he didn't want to participate in the inquiry, and that's not really up to him to bring in enough. It's not up to him and his administration to bring forth enough information to cause or to go to the House for a vote. Once it goes to court, and now we're into like the legal component of this. And again, like I'm not an expert in this in any means, but then if he gets subpoenaed by the Senate, then legally he has to participate in the process. But again, the Republicans control the Senate. So this is a big reason why Nancy Pelosi is holding articles back, because she doesn't feel like it's going to be a fair trial in the Senate, which we will also get into.
Yep.
So we take these articles, we go to and so if anyone has an opinion here, throw it out. I will stop talking about whatever I'm talking about to answer your questions, or to at least put your questions out here.
People just keep joining and they're pretty quiet today.
They're pretty quiet today. Chisholm usually has his watch party, and people are vocal on the watch party. So who knows? Florence has joined us. Hello. Good morning, Florence. We're still in the AM here in BC. So it goes to the House. So this is what happens. It goes to the House. You can look up the date if you want, but I don't remember when the date is. So when it goes to the House with these two articles, Pete, you can get up the votes for that too. So it's overwhelmingly vote for impeachment. Now, a really important note here is when it talks to party loyalty, 0 Republicans voted for impeachment. 0, which is pretty daunting when we talk about going to the Florence. When we talk about going to the Senate. And I believe 2 Democrats voted against impeachment. I believe there was 3 votes, no votes, I guess, meaning they weren't there. And then 1 voted present, which is basically a protest vote, saying that you're not voting either way because you don't agree with the entire process, right? So you're not saying like, no, he shouldn't be impeached. You're saying, I don't agree with what we're impeaching him for. This vote of present was Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, who's also a military veteran, and she is also one of the Democratic primary nominees for presidential nominees. So she's running for president. I was telling Pete, this is a candidate that has been suppressed by mainstream media a lot because she is against regime change wars. She's also been called the Russian asset by Hillary Clinton, which is ridiculous because she's a war veteran. She just doesn't agree with us going into sovereign nations and starting wars for no basis. And let's look at the Iraq War. She was someone that went to war. It joined the military during the Iraq War, which we now know was all false information. There was no weapons of mass destruction. If you watch the Vice, again, why that Vice movie is amazing. And that's, for me, I don't know if maybe it was just too late and it didn't come to light soon enough, but that's a reason for Bush to be impeached because he's invading countries unconstitutionally. And I think Tulsi Gabbard would agree with that. So she votes present because she doesn't agree with Trump being impeached on these very weak articles of impeachment. The funny thing about the whole Tulsi Gabbard component to this is she votes present. Trump then at his rally in Michigan, I believe, I could be wrong with that, he starts talking about how, because he starts praising her for voting present, almost like he thinks she's on his side, right? Like, because she doesn't agree with the way the Democrats are handling this, like she thinks Trump's right and it's a like these are the leaps in logic that Trump's making. Whether he actually believes that is who knows, right?
Yeah.
Like Trump's a manipulator. He's the world's greatest con man.
So as far as accusations go, the abuse of power, the votes in favor was 230. The votes against was 197. Present was 1, not voting 3. And the result, it was proved. And as far as the obstruction of Congress goes, votes in favor 229.
So less.
Votes against 198. Present was 1, not voting 3, and it was approved as well.
So less. Yes, both articles were approved. So that's we got to make that clear. But less people voted for Article 2.
Yep.
So okay, that makes sense.
By basically,
we're on the right track then.
Yep.
We kind of know what we're talking about. Not really. That's very interesting when we actually break it down like that. And I believe that this is the highest voting like for impeachment in history, correct?
It is.
And you were saying that
highest,
just a little under Bill Clinton.
Just like about 3 votes.
And when Bill Clinton was impeached, the Republicans controlled the House and the Democrats controlled the Senate. So we're the opposite.
Yes.
Interesting. And I mean, hey, if we look at that, Bill Clinton was acquitted in the Senate. So, I mean, if we're looking at foreshadowing, that's a good example. So Trump is praising Tulsi for this president, kind of makes it sound, he doesn't say it, but he makes it sound like Tulsi's on his side and, you know, because she has a base of support too. So he's probably hoping that if she doesn't get the go through the primaries, that Tulsi voters will flip to Trump, which is a reality. Now, this all being said, if you go to Kyle Kalinski's Secular Talk, he does a really great video about Trump name dropping Tulsi, and what Trump might not know, and maybe he does, maybe he doesn't, because the media hasn't covered this very much, is Tulsi wrote a censure, which is basically a formal disapproval of something, right? In this case, it's Trump, and she writes basically what it looks like is what she thinks he could be impeached for, and there's 5 what she considers impeachable offense, all based on foreign policy. So number 1, violating the war's power resolution on Article 1 of the Constitution by carrying out acts of war without congressional approval. And I think that has to do with Syria, but I could be wrong.
I think that's pretty close.
I'm not sure about that. Number 2, illegally and unconstitutionally using U.S. military forces to occupy and pillage oil field reserves of Syria, a sovereign nation. Now, this obviously is about Syria, which we were talking about this earlier. Trump literally said in an interview, we've secured the oil. Like the corruption is so blatant at this point. I don't even think Trump realized he's doing anything wrong. Now, this all being said, me and my cousin talk about this all the time. This is nothing new. This is something the U.S. government has done forever. It's just never been like this out in the open and blatant, right? It's always been suppressed or manipulated in the facts. Like Obama was the best for this. He always made people seem like it was something we really had to do. We got to keep in these wars, and it's all to line the pockets of the military-industrial complex, in my opinion. Number 3, recklessly enabling President Erdogan of Turkey to invade and occupy northern Syria and conduct ethnic cleansing of Syrian Kurds. So this is Trump pulling troops out of Syria, but of the space in Syria where we were helping from the Kurds being ethnically cleansed from Turkey, right?
Yep.
And this is something that Trump has come under criticism for, because he talks about, he's going to pull these troops out of the wars, and this is the first thing he's done for pulling troops out of wars, and then it's causing this ethnic cleansing of the Kurds, which is like not what everybody meant when they said we want to get Trumps out. I've also heard that he's deploying more troops to help Saudi Arabia, which leads us to number 4 in Tulsi's censure, is continued support for Saudi Arabia's genocide war in Yemen that has caused death, suffering, and starvation. Now, this is something I've talked about pretty much 50% of these podcasts. Anytime I can squeeze it in, because it's not being covered by media. It was covered once, I believe, by CNN. There is a proxy war going on in Yemen between Saudi Arabia and the Irani government, and then ISIS. So there's like a bunch of war occupancies here, but the Saudi Arabia's government is blocking off I don't know if they're blocking off or ISIS is, but they're helping it, but they're blocking off one of the ports in Yemen that brings in medicine and food. And this is being deemed the worst humanitarian crisis in human history, and it's not being talked about. And Bernie Sanders, Bernie 2020, I'm slowly not hiding my biases anymore. Bernie Sanders with Cory Booker, who I'm not a fan of, he's a corporate Democrat, but they tried to put a bill through the House and Senate, and or however that works. And I think
Yeah.
it went through everything, and everyone voted for it to stop funding Saudi Arabia and their war on Yemen. And when it went through, Trump vetoed it. He used his presidential veto to, and he even was quoted as saying, "This is not a time for peace." So,
Wow.
I mean, if for me, and I don't know how all these impeachable offenses work, but if that's not something to remove somebody out of office for, I don't know what the fuck is. And number 5 in Tulsi's censure is recklessly abandoning nuclear agreements with treaties like the INF treaty with Russia and the Iran nuclear agreement, thereby increasing the risk of nuclear war, nuclear proliferation, and the end war with Iran. So increasing the chance of war with Iran. And this is we may have talked about this in a podcast before, but yeah, he backed out of the Iran nuclear deal, which Iran was following to a T, and they always had. Yep. And then they pulled out of it, saying Iran is this. Oh no! Then after they pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal, saying that Iran is like building weapons and then this big threat because the states have been trying to go to war with Iran forever. And look, I know that's one good thing Obama did was helped prevent the war in Iran. So Trump acting like Kelly has joined us. Trump acting like Tulsi's on his side when clearly she is not. She just doesn't agree with the articles of impeachment that have been put forth. Anything you'd like to add to that current rant?
Not really. You actually pretty much summed everything up.
I'm out of breath now.
With you talking with your dad, it seemed to make you learn a little bit more about it. And
yeah, mostly what I didn't understand was like I had heard people say that Trump was basically saying that because he didn't get due process, he didn't want to participate in the process, which is due process. My dad was explaining me the context of why, and it's because the people he wanted to subpoena made no sense, and they were like, well, that doesn't make no.
Okay.
So this is one of these things where you still have to follow like the sense of the trial, but Trump is a dictator. Like he's a fascist dictator. Like I'm trying really hard to toe that world of gray line. And I will be the first to admit that mainstream media like CNN focuses on the wrong things when it comes to Trump all the time. But he's a con man dictator. He is the world's greatest con man. And there's some really good documentaries that go through his business history, which I never realized when he got voted in. So I was always saying to people when they would shit on Trump, and I say, well, yeah, but you got to understand, like the left media is very biased because they have certain donors, and those donors are against Trump's campaign and the things that they promote, and blah 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 blah. But when I saw some of these documentaries and then started reading about his business history and his dad's business history, and some of the people that they're affiliated with, he is the world's greatest con man, and you can see it in these Trump rallies because he's literally conned all these people that are believing him because he plays off emotion. There's a name for it. Not conjecture. Damn it. There's a name for that type of argument, and it's a dodge, right? Yeah. There's a new YouTube thing I was watching, and maybe I'll talk about it on a different podcast because I just was listening to it last night, and I forget exactly what it's called, but where they discuss different types of ploys in an argument and ways to dodge something, and this was one of them. If anyone can figure out the word I'm looking for, but it's where you play off
Charlie, this is your time to
Charlie,
shine.
This is your time. So what it is, it's when you attack somebody's character and play off people's emotions to avoid the context of an argument and trying to argue the points that are the logic in an argument, right?
Okay.
So if you start telling me something and it's logical and you lay out some facts, like maybe it's data, right? And I don't want to agree with that. I just go, oh, well, you're un-American. Like if you're American, right? You're like Trump, oh, you're not a patriot and you hate America. And look at this guy hates America. And then I just avoid the question. And then Trump believers go, oh yeah, the Democrats, they hate America and they hate people and blah, 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 right? And he never actually debunks the logic of what they're saying because he's just shitting on their character, right?
Yeah.
Fuck, there's a name for this, and it's driving me crazy because I just went through this yesterday. And I was going to talk about it today.
You should have wrote it down.
I should have written it down, man. That's what happens when you look at shit late at night.
So, as far as things go, where would you think that Hillary would have been at this point?
Like, would she have been impeached?
Yes. Do you think that she would have got to that point of being impeached as well?
That's an excellent question. Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing to remember here is regardless of whether or not Trump should be impeached. He's being impeached by the Democratic Party, led by Nancy Pelosi, as a political ploy, right?
Okay.
They don't like Trump. They want Trump out of office. They're probably worried he's going to get reelected in 2020, and we can talk about this as well. So as much as I agree that checks and balances have to be in place, I don't agree with this cherry picking, right? The Trump-Cheney administration should have been impeacched for warmongering and for leading, thousands of people being killed because of a war that should have never happened. And he never did, because the military-industrial complex is bipartisan. It goes through both parties, and no parties want to touch that. And this is, I think, another big reason why foreign policy was not discussed in these articles of impeachment, because the Democratic Party doesn't want to go near the military-industrial complex.
Yeah.
I mean, there's other arguments that Trump's business deals with Russia. There's evidence there. So maybe that's something that should have been focused on instead. I don't really have enough information on that. But I think we're cherry picking what these impeachable offenses are.
Okay.
I don't know if Obama, maybe there is things to dig up too, but to what you're saying is where would Hillary be? I think that depends on where the House majority would have been at this point. So if Hillary's in power and the House majority is Republican, I think they're going to do the same thing, like they did to Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
Look at those articles of impeachment. The guy got a fucking blowjob.
Yep.
And it was impeached. And then the Republican Party is saying that holding foreign aid isn't an impeachable offense, but a blowjob is.
Yeah.
Like, come on. And hey, I'm not saying that lying under oath isn't an impeachable offense, but I mean, if we're going to cherry pick.
But they were also saying with Trump that he's had touching allegations and rape allegations and all these other things. So
for sure.
Why wouldn't that have been impeached already?
Well, that's a great point. Well, I mean, I'd have to go back. I don't know a lot about the Clinton impeachment, but I think that I looked at the actual impeachable offense, and it was because he lied under oath. So I think he was under maybe
he put his hand up.
Maybe it was the inquiry. Maybe that's what it was. They did an inquiry, and he said, "I did not have sexual relations with that woman," and that ended up being a lie. So that's the actual impeachable offense.
Okay,
but I mean, that's something that Trump supporters don't talk about enough as well. I mean, love him or hate him, there's a lot of Republican presidents that people didn't like Bush. Bush is hated almost just as much as Trump at some, not after 9/11. He had a 83% approval rate, but down the line, especially as the Iraq war truth started to come to light, a lot of people hated Bush, but no one ever accused him of raping them, like falsely.
Nope.
So I mean, to just brush over these allegations of rape, I mean, we're getting a little off course. It's nothing to do with impeachment, but that's definitely something to consider. Like, this dude has been accused of sexually assaulting numerous women, and he is,
and some of these women have come forward,
and a lot of them. Trump got out of the Obama-Iran deal and Obamacare, I think, because had the Obama name. Oh yeah. Okay. Great point. My dad actually is very politically savvy, and this is a really good point. So Gary Palmer is saying that Trump got out of the Obama-Iran deal and the Obama Affordable Care Act because it was attached to the Obama name. And this is so. Oh, we're gonna get off track here, but that's okay. So
what else is new?
Pete totally called this too. So, in my opinion, from all the things I've read and watched, and if you watch Michael Moore's Fahrenheit 11/9, he kind of talks about this. Trump ran for president basically out of spite for a couple reasons. One, he ran for president as a publicity stunt because Gwen Stefani was getting paid more than him by NBC on The Voice, and he didn't like that, so he wanted to show that the American public loved him. But also because at the Correspondents' Dinner, because Trump was pushing the Obama passport thing, saying that he wasn't a citizen.
Yeah.
And then they released his birth certificate, the birther thing, right?
Yep.
They released Obama's birth certificate to prove that he was an American citizen. And then Obama made fun of Trump at the Correspondents' Dinner, saying that he can now go back to more pressing matters like, did we like the moon landing and who killed Tupac and Biggie? And that was and everyone's laughing at him, right? And Trump doesn't like being made fun of and humiliated. So then he ran for president. He ran for president out of spite. That's the guy in power.
And people voted him in.
Well, people voted him in because he was the only one with a populist message and said he was going to do all these things, which a lot of them he didn't do. And a lot of the things that he has done were things like build the wall and all these right-wing base things that he pushed, like immigration, all these things he's doing to rile up a very far right base, right?
Yep.
So those are the promises, and he's made a lot of he has a lot of the promises he put out, he has done, but
He has
a
followed
lot of
through,
these
yeah.
progressive things that people got tricked into voting for him because it was a populist message, like he's going to pull all the troops out of the wars and he's going to fix healthcare and all these things. He never did all these things. He just had a populist message. But to what my dad's point of what he's trying to say is, as soon as he got into office, he started just pulling anything that had the Obama. Trump's a brand guy. You got to remember
totally,
that. He's a
100%.
brand guy. He looks through everything through a Trump brand lens. So he wants to dismantle anything Obama did. A good example of this is Space Force.
Space Force.
You heard about Space Force?
Mm-hmm.
So Trump has been saying this, I think either since the election or right after he got voted in, saying that we need a Space Force wing of the government. So when they recently, like a few weeks ago, they voted for the new military budget, which includes an inflated budget for this Space Force wing. I looked it up. There's already a space military wing of the Air Force. It's called Air Force Space.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go on to Air Force Space's, it's their website or their communication site or whatever, they interviewed a guy talking about Space Force, and basically all he's saying they need to do is like get new uniforms and name tags and a new song, he said.
Perfect, a new song.
So it's
Right
basically Trump just wants to say he implemented Space Force. He implemented the new USMC deal, the United States, Mexico, Canada deal, which is replacing NAFTA, which really was like such minor tweaks. And some have argued in some parts of that deal it's worse, but then in others it's a slight advancement. So like for farmers or whatever. So he just wants to put his name on everything so he can say, these are all the things I did, whether or not they actually did much, right? So what my dad's saying, he's just dismantling all of these things that Obama did just to say that, oh, Obama's bad and I'm good. And blah, blah, blah. So this is the president of the most powerful country in the world, which is amazing.
Hello, Carrie.
Carrie has joined us. Hi, Carrie. How are you? Sorry, that was a bit of a rant, but that is just, I really, at this point, I'm going to do another video or maybe a live cast about misinformation. I think we've done one of these before. We did the fake news.
Yes,
we did fake news, but it's getting really bad. And I was saying this to Pete earlier, it's kind of why we started the podcast. It was more so that we could have these conversations with a small community, but it's getting really bad, this misinformation. And with Russia hacking coming in and spreading misinformation when it comes to the elections coming up, it's getting really scary. And there's, I printed off an article talking about the Brazil election.
Yep.
And how, because in Brazil, they have a number for their electorates. And there was some articles going on about this one guy everybody really liked. And they put a number on for him and vote for him with this number. But that number was actually for the right-wing candidate. And the candidate that everyone liked wasn't even running anymore because he had some like corruption issues too. But he wasn't even running. So that's a whole other thing. But I think the reason why I veer off and I want to give a little more context is to like, this is the guy we're talking about. Like when we're talking about Trump and the impeachment and who's right and who's wrong.
Yeah.
Like, this is the con man we're talking about, who doesn't actually care about America or American people. He cares about Trump, he cares about his ego, he cares about his base, he cares about getting reelected. He doesn't care about you, he doesn't care about me because we're Canadian, but he doesn't care if you're American either. So this is the guy we're talking about. So the next thing I want to talk about is Nancy Pelosi holding articles. So this hasn't gone to the Senate yet. Have you heard anything about this?
No, there isn't much. There isn't much being said. Mm-hmm. It's just basically saying that she's holding information, will not let any of the documentation go through until the hearing now.
Yeah. So before that happened, before the vote, I believe just after the vote happened, but before Nancy Pelosi said she was going to hold articles from the Senate, Mitch McConnell. So Mitch McConnell is the majority leader of the Senate. So there's a Republican majority right now. Mitch McConnell leads that. He was on Fox News in an interview saying that he is 100% going to coordinate with Trump, the Trump administration, and Trump's lawyers when it comes to this trial. Okay. Wow. So that's like having a jury member say that they're going to listen only to the defense's lawyers and do whatever the defense lawyers say and not even listen to the prosecution. Really, when we think about it, that's really what Mitch McConnell is saying, which is fascist dictator. Maybe I don't know, fascist dictatorship, but that's like a dictatorship. That's a totalitarian situation that we're in here, right?
Yep.
Where like, where's the democracy in that? You're not going to subpoena witnesses, like your own witnesses. You're not going to have, I guess Trump's not going to testify. Like, I don't know what that means. That means none of your people are going to testify. We're not going to listen to facts. Just whatever Trump's lawyers and Trump's administration spews out, you're just going to agree with that, I guess. I don't even know what the fuck that means.
The only person
she hasn't filled any paperwork and is not going to until the Senate hearing. Well, no, the Senate. Maybe I'm wrong. What does that mean? Senate hearing. Is that not the trial? Because, sorry, Carrie, you can elaborate on. So Carrie's saying she hasn't filed any paperwork and is not going to until the Senate hearing. But from what I understand, she has to file that paperwork for it to go to the Senate for the trial, unless like there's a hearing before that I don't know about. So I guess the question is that the right thing to do? Right?
Yes.
Is the right thing to do at this point is to hold these articles from the Senate? So Michael Moore, not the wrestler that we all know and hate. Really, everyone hates
pretty
Michael
much.
Moore.
Yep.
It's just got a face you want to hit, you know. We're talking about the documentary Ist. Documentarian in the documentarian.
Just say not the wrestler.
Yeah, not the wrestler. Michael Moore, who's wrote and shot and produced the film Fahrenheit 9/11 and 11/9 and Sicko and a lot of really great films. He's been a big advocate for Flint, Michigan's water crisis and things like that. He has really interesting perspectives on the election and on the trial. And he's praising Nancy Pelosi for holding these articles for a few reasons. Because the Democratic Party should and wants to put pressure on the Republican Party to subpoena certain witnesses. Now, one thing I never thought about, can you look up John Bolton? Michael Bolton. Can you look up John Bolton for a second? I just want to know what his title was because I keep forgetting. Before he got fired. Secretary of State? Am I crazy?
Former National Security Advisor.
National Security Advisor, right? Big old warmonger, right? John Bolton loves war. If you talk to him, and hey, he's not like a liar either, from what I hear. I mean, maybe like tweaks the truth a little bit, but I keep wanting to say Michael Bolton. John Bolton loves war. If you've ever listened to interviews with him, he talks about how we need to get into these wars, and we're all for it, and it's what we need to do, like regardless of facts. Just like we need to go to war. But Trump fired John Bolton because John Bolton
2018 to 2019.
John Bolton didn't want Trump to pull troops out of Syria. I believe that was why he argued against Trump. And so he fired John Bolton. So what Michael Moore is saying that Nancy Pelosi should be doing as a strategy is pressuring subpoenas, like the Senate to subpoena John Bolton, because John Bolton was in the administration at the time of this Ukraine call. And so what the Republican Party would be scared of is John Bolton testifying about the hidden server. So this is where this dictatorship style, totalitarian style of Trump comes in, is he keeps saying on his Twitter, like in his tweets, where he has 63 million followers, which is a huge influence on the American population that has like what, 200 million people? Or how many million people are in the United States?
I honestly
Google that shit. But like 63 million, and those aren't all Americans. Like I follow Trump because it's fucking hilarious. But he has a huge influence, and he's trying to say that Ukraine call was perfect, and they had
in 2018.
Yeah, 300. Okay, so that's I guess less than I thought.
Yeah,
but it's still a huge influence, right?
People, yeah.
It's 63 million people or whatever.
Yep.
Lower than Obama, so that probably eggs him. Obama's got like 100. I think he has the most Twitter followers of everyone.
Yep.
So he's trying to say that this call was perfect and the transcript has been released. First of all, the transcript was not released. I don't know how you'll be able to Google this, but how much of that transcript was actually released, like, of the full Ukraine call was actually released. I know it was just like highlights of it, but even in the highlights, you can pull out enough information to call that a quid pro quo, which Trump is denying, right? No quid pro quo, no quid pro quo. Say that 3 times fast. I can say it twice fast. That's it. So this is where the information gets diluted because no one's going to actually go look it up. Go look at the transcript. Well, people that follow Trump are just going to be like, yeah, go follow the transcript. We believe Trump, blah, 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 blah. So what Michael Moore is arguing is that if you subpoena I'm jumping ahead. So with that Ukraine call, as soon as that Ukraine call was done. And I think once the whistleblower had said something, or maybe before the whistleblower, but that call got moved to a private server like immediately, right? That so that nobody can get into to see what was actually on that call. So what Michael Moore is arguing is, which is a good point, you have a guy like Trump who's a complete con artist. If this Ukraine call is in this server, there's got to be other stuff in that server. And that could be conspiratorial, and we could argue that, oh, well, he's just saying, Michael Moore saying that because he's a Democrat and blah, blah, which might be true. But the argument is that if John Bolton gets subpoenaed, he might say what is in that server. And he might start singing like a bird and saying all the things that Trump has done that would be in the server, which would then force them to subpoena the server. So what Michael Moore is saying, if that happens, some of these senators that normally would vote for Trump to be acquitted are going to start looking into future elections, like maybe 2020 or at the furthest 2024 or 2025, I guess, is when they would vote in the Senate or for the House and the Senate. They're going to start looking towards their political futures, and they're going to start abandoning ship. And you only need like six or seven Republican senators to vote for removal of office for Trump to be removed from office. So I guess the argument from Michael Moore is there is actual chance that Trump could be removed from office. So that's my Michael Moore bit. Any comments on that, Handsome Pete?
Not really. And I'm just reading up this rough transcript of Trump's first phone call with the Ukrainian leader. They really didn't talk about much in there that...
But rough transcript, what does that mean? Like it's highlights, or it's just like one...
It's basically highlights of what they were... Yeah, they were just talking that there was a memo made out and nothing in there was about corruption.
Right. So it was a memo.
Yep.
So a memo went out, not the full transcript, which Trump has repeated over and over and over again, which again, to drive this point home, that is what con artists do. That's what dictators do. They repeat the same lie. You watch Trump and he'll repeat that same line like 7 times in one segment, one interview, right?
Yep.
He'll say one thing, he'll say again. Trump talk. That's what people call Trump talk. There's another documentary where they have people that used to work for Trump, because Trump would invest in a lot of these companies, right? And that's Trump talk, where he repeats the same thing and he almost goes to make a point and then he just goes back to repeating the same thing. So that's just one memo. So the question is, where do we go from here, right? So articles need to go to the Senate for a trial. Oh, sorry. One other thing, like I said, jumping around. The impeachment confusion is something I want to talk about. And the people close to me that don't really follow politics have been confused by the process. So after the vote in the House, we have the right and the left. And you know me, I'm not like putting labels on things right and left. But for this example, we're going to use right and left. So on the right side of the argument, everyone was saying that, well, Trump hasn't been impeached yet. Right? Because it has to go through the trial. It has to go to the Senate, and it has to go to the vote in the Senate. Until the Senate votes on it, he hasn't been impeached. Okay? Yeah. Not true. So it goes to the House. That's an impeachment. There is one lawyer, Harvard lawyer, that says there is a caveat here. He says until the articles go to the Senate and the trial starts, he has technically not been impeached. Okay? So there's a bit of debate here between lawyers and law, but going back to that Vice movie, that's the same shit Cheney's lawyers were doing. Yep. They were nitpicking the law to get Cheney more power as vice president. So remember, like these laws with these lawyers, they can be they can dig through the semantics enough to change the narrative, right? But the majority of people would agree. And I mean, if we go back historically, after the vote for impeachment, you are impeached as president.
Yes.
On the other side of the argument, which I've heard from people close to me, is when the vote went through, people are like, oh, Trump's so delusional. He's going to walk into the White House tomorrow thinking that he's still president. And I was like, but he is still president. He hasn't been removed from office yet.
No.
So it goes both ways. So this is our world of gray. On one side, we have people saying that he hasn't been impeached. And on the other side, people think impeachment means that he is no longer president. Neither are true. Okay. So it has to go through the Senate and it has to go to trial. We don't need anything. We're Canadian. We're just going to be over here drinking Molson, getting drunk off 2 beer while you drink your water beer. Okay. Yeah, we will literally will be drinking beer during the trial, just
Yep.
laughing, eating popcorn, maybe live streaming while we watch the. And hey, in the grand scheme of thing, I know I sound cynical. I am so entertained by all of this. I think it's terrible and should never happen. I think it should have never gone to this. There should never be a president that acts like this. But it is entertaining. As
Just the picture of you like sitting on the couch eating popcorn and
Watching-
doing this, like, yeah, we definitely have
just
to
hilarious.
podcast that.
But in the Senate, there needs to be a 2/3 vote, 2/3 majority vote for removal, and that's 20 total votes, right? So that's not all the Republicans, but you do need every Democrat to vote for removal, and then you need, I think it's seven Republican senators.
Yes.
Now, one little context that we talked about earlier, in the House vote, zero Republicans voted for impeachment. Zero. Okay. 2 Democrats voted against impeachment. Okay. 2 voted against. So not all Democrats agree with this impeachment. 1 Democrat voted present. So that's 3 Democrats that don't agree with it. And then you said 3 were a no vote. So they weren't there. And I'm not sure how many of those 3 were Democrats, but if we assume it's all 3, that's what, 5 Democrats that don't agree with impeachment, or at least 2 that don't, or sorry, that'd be 6, 3 that don't agree and 3 that are no vote. So we don't know what their opinion would be for him to be removed. Okay. And then we know Tulsi voted present. So most likely what it seems like, unless what Michael Moore talks about, it most likely seems like Trump will be acquitted in the Senate. And then Michael Moore has his little bit of context that we talked about earlier. All right. So, Pete, anything to add before I go to my prediction for 2020, and then we'll wrap this bad boy up?
No, actually, I'm actually really, I've learned a lot today just because just quickly looking it up and searching it, I didn't know a whole lot.
Yeah.
And just even you going over the things that you go over, definitely Michael Moore, I want to go listen to and find out some more information about that for sure.
So this podcast is kind of under the Bo Burnham philosophy, and Bo Burnham talks about this when it comes to performance, how he talks about celebrity lip syncing on Jimmy Fallon.
Yep.
He jokes about how it's the end of culture and that things like that don't deserve your attention.
Yeah.
So this is what I'm saying is fake news and all this bullshit doesn't deserve your attention and your attention span. And this is why it feels so overwhelming to filter through information. So this is why we have this podcast, because we want to encourage people to seek out better, more incorrect information. And I'm not saying we're it. And the Bo Burnham line is, we're the people that you come to and we go get better. And then here's some sources. And you go, thanks, weird guys. And then you go get better, right?
Yep.
But we're just here to say that a lot of this bullshit in between is not serving a purpose, okay? And it's not helping anyone. But to your point, sorry.
It's okay.
To your point, we're saying how much we learned just by looking up a few things here and there and discussing this. This doesn't take a lot of effort to be a little bit more educated. And I know it's stressful. And I know there's a lot going on in the world and it's scary, but we all need to educate ourselves a little bit more and not just follow Fox News and Trump's Twitter. I'm not saying you can't follow his Twitter, look up Fox News, but when you start looking up a real array, as they call it, meta-analysis, right? When you look up articles, when you look at the meta-analysis of all the information, it starts to really, we were talking about this with Ben Shapiro earlier. I used to really like Ben Shapiro, but when you look at the argument from a lot of different sources, it then makes you realize when you watch things like Fox News and Ben Shapiro, they're full of shit.
Wow.
All right. It just starts to make sense.
You see on CNN, then
or CNN either, right? Yeah, and that's why I'm critical of them as well. So Leah is saying, has any president actually been removed from office after an impeachment trial? That's good. Google that. I think one was. No, I don't think that's right.
No.
So Nixon resigned before it went to the vote of the House. So Nixon was impeached. There's one other president that was impeached. So Bill Clinton, Richard Nixon, Donald Trump, and there's one other like in the 40s that I don't know who that is, and I'm not sure if he got removed from office. Bill Clinton was acquitted. Richard Nixon resigned before the vote in the House because there was like 5 impeachment articles and there was so much evidence against him with Watergate that there was no way that the Senate could, and I don't know who controlled the Senate, but there's no way he wasn't getting removed from office without massive backlash from the public. Luckily for Trump, a good not majority, it's actually a minority, but a small minority of the American population still support Trump and don't think he should be impeached. So if he doesn't get impeached, this isn't going to really rile up so much of the population that there's going to be riots and shit, right?
Yeah, so the first one was Andrew Johnson in 1868.
And he was not removed from office?
He was not removed, and neither was Bill Clinton in 1998.
So Trump would be the first president to be removed from office, with Nixon stepping down.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so we have Michael Moore's, not prediction, but he's saying one way that the Democrats could remove Trump from office, and we could have a whole other debate about whether or not Mike Pence is any better, because Mike Pence would then take control or become president until the 2020 election. That's a whole other debate, which we're not going to get into. So my prediction for 2020, if you watch this podcast religiously, it hasn't really changed all that much, but because it's on point of this topic, here's my prediction for 2020. This will eventually go to the Senate. If it goes to the Senate and the trial is completed before the 2020 general election, I believe Trump will be acquitted by the Senate. So the Senate will vote no for removal of office. He will be acquitted. Trump will then use this to rile up his base. Trump is really good with manipulating narratives and posturing to the other side's character. And damn, I really wish I could remember what that was called.
Like you've been saying this whole podcast.
Like I've been saying, but I
like
can't remember what the word is. But he's going to con man it up, and he's going to say, look at them, it was a hoax. It's just going to...
Charlie shit the bed today. I don't know what happened.
It's just going to solidify everything he said, just like the Russia investigation.
Yeah.
Because that was more or less a bullshit investigation that didn't have enough evidence. Not saying that there probably isn't something going on there, but didn't have enough evidence, and he used it. Oh, it's the hoax. And so now he's got two things to talk about. It's going to rile up his base. Not saying that it's going to rile up enough of his base that there couldn't be more Democrats that could vote for a Democratic nominee. But on the other side of this, I believe the way it's going now, and with Bernie Sanders being smeared, Joe Biden will become the Democratic nomination in the general election.
Yeah.
And if that happens, just like 2016 with Hillary Clinton, young people and apathetic people, so people that have just kind of given up, are going to stay home when it comes to voting day. And we know statistically and historically that when there's low voter turnout, Republicans have the advantage. And in the era of Trump, with such a loyal, like crazy base for Trump, all those Trump supporters, which have not budged a fucking bit, are all going to come out to vote in all those working states, and Trump will be reelected in 2020. So unless there are any major changes like a Bolton being subpoenaed and having to testify and Trump being removed, I believe that this is going to do nothing but help Donald Trump in the 2020 election, and Donald Trump will be reelected in 2020 to 2014, and you will see 4 more years of Trump. And I know people that are confused by this, and I know people that will support Donald Trump, and people that are not supporting Donald Trump and
angered by him
and don't believe he will win 2020. And then I know there are people that are like me and think that that don't want Donald Trump to get through, but will still think he will be reelected. And it's this whole whirlwind of all of us people trying to figure out what the hell's going on, because we're all just a bunch of people living in a society divided by black and white arguments. But luckily for you people, we are here to help you explore, decipher, sift through information, and explore the world of gray. Thank you all for joining us. Peace, love,